What if the fate of an empire rested not on its greatest warriors, but on the watchful eyes of mere birds? Tonight, we journey back to a moment in 390 BC, when the eternal city of Rome faced its darkest hour. A moment when its mighty legions had fallen, its walls breached, and its very existence hung by a thread. But the story of Rome's survival isn't always told in tales of heroic battles or strategic genius. Sometimes, the most improbable saviors emerge from the most unexpected places, leaving us to wonder how such small, unassuming creatures could possibly tip the scales of history. We're about to uncover a true legend that has echoed through 2 millennia, a tale of desperation, a silent attack, and a chorus of honks that changed everything. Imagine the year 390 BC. Rome, a burgeoning power, yet still vulnerable, faced an existential threat unlike any it had seen before. From the north, a ferocious Celtic tribe known as the Gauls, led by the fearsome chieftain Brennus, swept down through the Italian peninsula. They were a force of nature, their war cries chilling, their fighting style brutal and effective. In a devastating confrontation at the Battle of the Allia River, Rome's legions were utterly crushed. It was a humiliating defeat that left the road to the city wide open. Panic gripped Rome. The Gauls stormed the city, plundering and burning. Most of the population fled, seeking refuge in nearby towns or scattered across the countryside. The heart of Rome lay in ruins, a smoldering testament to Brennus's power. Yet a small, defiant remnant of the Roman people refused to abandon their city entirely. A determined group of senators, soldiers, and their families retreated to the Capitoline Hill, one of Rome's 7 hills, a natural fortress towering above the Tiber River. This hill became their last bastion, their final desperate stronghold. They barricaded themselves within the ancient walls, clinging to the hope that help would arrive, or that the Gauls would eventually tire of the siege. Every night, they gazed down at the fires of the Gallic encampment, a constant reminder of their precarious situation. The future of Rome, it seemed, was flickering like the last embers of a dying fire. Amidst this desperate struggle, something peculiar resided on the Capitoline Hill, a flock of geese. The geese, mind you, were considered sacred birds, dedicated to the temple of Juno. They were housed within its precincts, revered and protected. Even as the Romans faced the crushing grip of famine, with every mouth on the hill needing sustenance, the sacred geese would not be eaten. This choice, made out of reverence, would prove to be one of the most pivotal in Roman history. Meanwhile, Brennus and his Gauls grew increasingly frustrated. The siege was dragging on, and though they had burned much of the city, taking the heavily fortified Capitoline Hill was proving to be a formidable challenge. They had tried direct assaults, but the Romans, though few, fought with the desperation of those with nothing left to lose. So the Gauls devised a cunning, silent plan. One moonless night, under the cloak of deepest darkness, a small detachment of Gallic warriors began to scale the steepest, most treacherous side of the Capitoline Hill. They moved with an almost supernatural stealth, their movements muffled, their bodies pressed against the rock face. They knew that Roman sentries patrolled the more accessible paths, but this cliff was deemed impassable, unguarded. Even the dogs, usually keen to bark at intruders, remained silent, perhaps lulled by the deceptive quiet of the night, or perhaps they simply didn't notice the creeping shadows. The Gauls were halfway up, inching closer to the summit, to the unsuspecting Romans. Victory was within their grasp, a swift, silent takeover that would end the siege and crush Roman resistance once and for all. But then a sudden, piercing clamor shattered the night. The geese, with their remarkably acute senses and natural vigilance, began to honk. Not a gentle quack, but a full-throated, furious cacophony, a guttural alarm that ripped through the silence of the night like a thunderclap. Their wings flapped wildly, creating a commotion that no one could ignore. This sudden outburst of noise instantly roused the sleeping Roman defenders. Among them was Marcus Manlius Capitolinus, a former consul and a soldier renowned for his bravery. Waking to the chaotic honking, he immediately understood the danger. Without hesitation, he sprang to action. Grabbing his sword and shield, he rushed to the wall, arriving just as the first Gaul scrambled over the top. Manlius, a man of incredible strength and resolve, wasted no time. He met the attacker with a powerful thrust, sending him tumbling back down the cliff face. His cries of alarm rallied the other Roman soldiers, who, now fully awake and armed, joined the desperate defense, pushing back the climbing Gauls with whatever they could find, rocks, spears, and their own sheer will. The Gauls, caught off guard by the alarm and the sudden fierce resistance, were thrown into disarray and eventually repelled, their silent assault utterly foiled by a flock of noisy birds. The alarm raised by the Geese was the turning point. It gave the Romans the precious moments they needed to mount a defense, turning what would have been a silent massacre into a successful repulsion of the Gallic attack. The siege continued for a little longer, but the Gauls, demoralized by this failed attempt and weary of the prolonged conflict, eventually agreed to withdraw in exchange for a hefty ransom of gold. Legend has it that as the gold was being weighed, Brennus famously threw his sword onto the scales, declaring, "Vae victis," woe to the conquered. Rome had paid the price, but it had survived. From that moment on, the story of the Capitoline Geese became a legendary part of Roman history. To honor this extraordinary event, annual ceremonies were held. Each year, a procession would make its way through the city, featuring a gilded litter carrying a goose, revered and celebrated. And in a rather symbolic, almost comical act of remembrance, dogs were also paraded, but they were symbolically punished for their failure to bark, perhaps hung on crosses as a stark reminder of their ancestors' oversight. This tradition served as a yearly reminder that even the humblest creatures could play a vital role in the destiny of a great nation. Rome, battered but unbowed, eventually recovered, rebuilt, and went on to become the dominant power of the ancient world. The story of the Capitoline Geese isn't just a charming historical anecdote. It highlights some fascinating truths about these birds. Geese possess incredibly strong territorial instincts. They are fiercely protective of their flock and their perceived home. This, combined with their naturally acute hearing and excellent eyesight, makes them incredibly effective natural alarm systems. Even the slightest disturbance, a rustle in the bushes, or a shadow where there shouldn't be one, can trigger their loud, piercing honks. Their calls are not just loud, they carry over considerable distances, making them impossible to ignore. This isn't just an ancient phenomenon either. Even today, geese are employed as guards in various capacities. Farmers use them to protect their livestock and property from intruders. There have even been instances of military installations and warehouses using geese as a cost-effective and surprisingly effective security measure. Their vigilance and noise can deter unwanted visitors, proving that some lessons from history remain remarkably relevant. History often focuses on the grand narratives, the brilliant generals, the powerful emperors, the decisive battles that reshape maps and destinies. But sometimes, the greatest stories, the most profound turning points, emerge from the most humble and unexpected corners. Empires are built by mighty hands, but as Rome learned that fateful night, empires are sometimes saved by the most unlikely of heroes. That night, Rome was saved by geese. If you're captivated by these forgotten tales from history, make sure you don't miss our next videos.